Hello South Shore, welcome back to 3rd grade online with Miss Nazaripour. Today I have a beautiful book for you called Dreamers. But before we get started reading that, I wanted to review what we started working on last Friday when we were beginning to talk about theme. So we'll take a look at the chart we made last week. Theme is the message, or in other words, it's the moral or the lesson that the author wants you to learn. Some common lessons you might have found in the books you've read are to appreciate what you have, to stand up for what you believe in, to show kindness, to be responsible, not to judge others, not to hide from your problems, and to support your friends. Last week we read What Would You Do with a Problem, and we decided that book taught us, the audience, the author wanted us to learn that we don't need to hide from our problems, but we need to face them. So in fiction, you will often find that the author is actually trying to teach the audience a lesson, and that is the message. So sometimes to find the theme, you have to investigate. Sometimes it will be stated and the author will tell you what the theme is. Like sometimes you'll find that in a fable, at the end of the fable, the author will just state the theme, state the moral of the story. But sometimes you have to use clues in the text to kind of infer what the author wants you to learn. A good thing to do when you are trying to figure out the theme is to ask yourself, what do the characters learn? Because if the characters learn a lesson, good chance the author actually wants you, the reader, to learn that lesson. So today we're going to read the book Dreamers. And as we read it, we're going to be thinking about what the theme of this text is. What you'll need for this activity is a pencil in your journal, because I will have a couple of questions at the end for you to answer. Get those things and come on back and we'll read together. Okay, 3rd graders, let's go ahead and read Dreamers by Yuri Morales. And before we get started, just like always, we read the blurb. There's none on the back, but for this book, it's on the inside cover. What if you dreamed of a new life and it came to you? What if that new life led you to a new country where no one spoke your language, where you felt alone and ignored? What if you had to make that new place your home? What if you found that home in a world of books? And what if it all were true? Okay, 3rd graders, before we get started, let's make a text to self connection. This author is talking about building a new life and making a new home. And I'm wondering, what does home mean to you? So go ahead and turn to the person sitting next to you if you have a family member or friend near you. If not, just tell me on the screen, what does home mean to you? To me, 3rd graders, home is somewhere, and maybe it's one place or maybe it's multiple places, but it's where you share your life with the people that you love. That's what home is to me. That's why South Shore feels more than a school to me. It feels like a home because I get to share so much of my life there with the people that I love, you guys. So let's go ahead and get started reading this book. And the illustrations in this book are just gorgeous. I dreamed of you, then you appeared. Together we became amor, love, amor. Resplendent life, you and I. And can you see who the author is talking about? She dreamed of the little baby. One day we bundled gifts in our backpack and crossed a bridge outstretched like the universe. And when we made it to the other side, thirsty, in awe, unable to go back, we became immigrants. And 3rd graders, we've talked a lot in class about what an immigrant is. Some of you have immigrants in your family like I do, and some of you are even immigrants yourself. An immigrant is somebody who moves from one country to another country, often in search of home or a new home. Migrant, you and I. The sky and the land welcomed us in words unlike those of our ancestors. So again, third graders, migrant is just a word for another word for an immigrant, somebody who moves. And you know what ancestors are because we've talked about that a lot. Ancestors are the people in our family who came before us. There were so many things we didn't know, unable to understand, and afraid to speak. You can see she's looking at the map and saying, I. We made lots of mistakes. Looks like they're swimming in the fountain. You and I became caminantes, and that word means walkers, travelers. Thousands and thousands of steps we took around this land until the day we found. So third graders, before we figure out what they found, what do you think the problem that the mom and child are having in this story? Think about the problem that they're having. They're not able to find their way around. They don't know the local customs. Remember, that's one of the vocabulary words. Customary is one of the vocabulary words Mr. Moreno taught us this week. But they don't know the traditional customs of our land, of their new land, and they can't speak the language, so it's hard for them to get around. Until the day we found a place we had never seen before. Suspicious, improbable. These are great vocabulary words. Where did they find third graders? One of our favorite places, the library. Unbelievable, surprising. Unimaginable. Where we didn't need to speak, we only needed to trust, and we did. Books became our language. Books became our home. Books became our lives. We learned to read. So we thought about the problem, about how this mother and her child were having a hard time finding a place in their new home for themselves. They felt like they were making lots of mistakes and people didn't understand them and they didn't understand things. They're solving their problem. How are they solving their problem? Think and hold it in your head. We learn to read, to speak, to write, and to make our voices heard. Someday, we will become something we haven't even yet imagined. But right now, we are stories. We are two languages. We are lucha. We are resilience. We are hope. We are dreamers. We are soñadores of the world. Dreamers of the world. We are love, amor. Love. And here we have the author's note, which is called My Story. And I'm going to go ahead and read that to you because it might help us get some more understanding of the book we just read. All of us have stories. Each of them is different. This story began in 1994 when I crossed a bridge with my 2-month-old son, Kelly, from Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, to El Paso, Texas. And though I did not know it at the time, to a new life in a strange and unfamiliar place. The United States of America. Once here, I was surprised by the quietness of the streets, the houses neatly lined up along the roads, and later by the cold winds of San Francisco Bay in summer. I had come so that my son could meet his great-grandfather, Ernie, who was very ill and not expected to live much longer, and to marry Kelly's father, a U.S. citizen. I wanted to return to Mexico soon afterward, but was shocked to learn that the U.S. immigration rules and my new status as a permanent resident, I was now expected to remain in the United States. I had become an immigrant. But could I possibly call this new place my home? Like most immigrants, I miss things that felt familiar. My family, the food, my friends, my job as a swimming coach, and my ability to communicate, to understand, and to be understood. In this new place where I did not speak the language, it was as if no one seemed to notice I existed, as if my words and actions didn't count. In those first days, I constantly wondered if I would ever find a place where I felt valued. Then one day, Kelly's grandmother brought us to a building that would change our lives forever. We discovered the public library, and it was spectacular. I had never been in a place where you could just take books from the shelves without asking and without being scolded for taking them. And there were picture books, something I had not encountered before. I could not believe how beautiful and sturdy they were. And then when I opened them, I was amazed at the power of their illustrations. Even though I could understand very few of the words, I realized that I could understand the story through the images, a realization that would come to inspire me later on. And third graders, I'm having a text-to-text connection. Do you remember in the book Juno, where Juno communicates with his grandmother through illustrations because he speaks English and she spoke Korean? There's a similar thing happening, huh? I began bringing Kelly there almost every day, and although at first it was difficult for a little baby to stay longer than a few minutes, eventually we were able to spend entire afternoons looking at picture books, often only leaving when we were told the library was closing. We were at home. During those years, as Kelly got older, librarians at the Western Addition branch, Richmond branch, Mission branch, and the San Francisco main library on Larkin Street, among many others, guided Kelly and me to find books we would love, though in an English that I struggled to understand. One day, when Kelly was not yet 2 years old, Nancy Jackson, the children's librarian at the Western Addition branch, handed him his own library card. I was in awe. We could now take home a stroller brimming with books. One of the most important things I learned at the library is that through books, we can find our path and our purpose. I also learned that I loved to tell stories and that I could tell them through books. I studied the books I admired so much and became determined to make my own. My first efforts were very simple, made by hand and bound with ribbons, filled with my own stories and drawings. I was so proud of those books. Kelly was not a dreamer in the way the word is used today to refer to young, undocumented immigrants who were brought to the United States as children and who have lived and gone to school here and know no other country than this as their own. Kelly and I were dreamers in the sense that all immigrants, regardless of status, are dreamers. We enter a new country carried by hopes and dreams, carrying our own special gift to build a better future. Dreamers and dreamers of the world, migrants, soñadores. Now I have told you my story. What's yours? Okay, third graders, let's think. What is the author wanting us to learn? She came to a new country with her very young son, and she's chosen to write this story about the book. She came looking for a home with her new family. She encountered lots of challenges. What I want you to do is I want you to think about 2 questions that I want you to write about today. So go ahead and turn in your journal to the next blank page and write today's date. Today's date is 5-8-20. And write the title of the book, Dreamers. Whoops. Your first question that I want you to answer today is, what is the family's problem in the story? So what problem does the mother and son encounter in the story? Sorry for that glare. So question 1, here we go. Question 1 is, what is the family's problem in the story? And question 2 says, what is the theme or the message the author wants you to learn. So think about all of the changes that happened to this family. Think about how they persevered through them and made a home of their own. Think about all of those things and then tell me what you think the message of this story actually is. There we go. Again, just as a friendly reminder, we always make sure we're writing in full sentences. So for instance, for number 1, what is the family's problem in the story? You could write, in this story, the family's problem is fill in the blank. And then for 2, the theme the author wants the reader to learn is blank, and then answer. All right, third graders, when you get these 2 questions all done, take a picture, either text or email it to your teacher. I hope you loved this beautiful book as much as I did. Thanks, third graders. Take care. Keep dreaming. We'll talk soon.